show up at the meet time and we'll coach you through it. You don't have to have any experience.
Welcome to the Motorsports and Driver Development Show. I'm Katie.
And I'm Keto.
And today we are joined with Akea Siverts, who is a research scientist for the Allen Institute, but also a pretty badass stage captain. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here.
We are excited to have you here. I do think it's important to start with what I think is an integral story to our rally history, which is that when Keto was first thinking about starting a series, trying to figure out how that would come together, he was talking to people kind of shopping around the idea.
Specifically rally sprints.
Yeah. And you mentioned it to somebody who was like, look, you're going to need a stage captain. And there's this woman. She is a badass stage captain. She's no BS, no drama. You need her. And you were on vacation at the time. And Keto had to wait like a month. Finally got to meet you. And what do you know? All the things that were being said about you were true. So we are very excited that you have been on our team since the beginning.
Oh, it's been so fun. You guys have really done a lot for the rally community. So it's exciting to be part of that growth.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, same to you. Before we get into rally things, I would like it if you would talk a little bit about your job, because I think it's super awesome that rally is made up of people with really different careers and interests and things like that. And I don't know if we have a lot of them, but you are the only research scientist that I know rallies with us. So talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I guess the short of it is I was a mouse pimp and a mouse god. That's so I started out my career at the University of Washington. I made genetically engineered mouse models. So that forwarded into making mouse models for the Allen Institute for Brain Science. So I make neurons glow in the mouse brain, and we study those for connectivity and discovery and foundational research to see what's in the brain. So a lot is really still unknown about the brain, and we give therapeutics and drugs. We don't really know what it's going to target. So we're trying to find out the cells in the brain.
So this might be a dumb question to you, but what is a mouse model?
Oh, it's a genetically modified mouse. So you take your basic mouse, you insert some genes to replicate disease, or in my case, I insert genes to fluoresce certain brain cells.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, it gives you the ability to see the way things interact in a brain sort of relative to how it may interact for a human, and then allows you to decide on ways to seek treatment or the way diseases progress or whatever without really interrupting the mouse's life too drastically.
Yeah, or we don't want to introduce anything detrimental. We don't want a sick mouse, so we make sure that it's healthy. So basically, you can equate it to if you're trying to find one noodle in a huge plate of spaghetti, how do you find that noodle? Well, you label it. So you label it with fluorescence in the brain. So we're labeling cells to find cell types.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm sure that did not lead you into a hobby of rally. How did you get started in the sport?
No, so I was always interested in cars. I took auto mechanics in high school. I was the only girl in the class, and I did a lot of oil changes for probably all of the teachers in school. So it was fun. My dad and my grandpa worked on cars, so we were in the garage, and it was nice that there wasn't a gender bias. You took my brother, you took us into the garage, and so I always was exposed to that growing up. My brother was the one who brought me into racing, so he was interested in cars as well, and found the rally community. Took me to my first rally sprint at the ORV park, in the Stratoline ORV park, and that was when the Bug-Eye WRX first came to the U.S., and it really made an impression on me. Just the sound of the flat four was pretty awesome. So 2 years later, in 2005, I got my Bug-Eye. And my brother said to me, well, you need to start racing. So 6 months later, I started autocross. He took me go-karting. I loved it. He was in my right seat for 3.5 years. I discovered rallycross. He was there, and I beat him twice. He's not here to protest that, but I legit, well, he will say there was a technicality on that, but I did beat him twice. So it was great having the sport together with my family. So he got into stage rally, became a stage captain, and got me on board. So I volunteered with his friends who had ham radios, and I was like, wow, this is cool. This is like a whole inside scene that you listen in on the radio. So got my ham radio license and became a stage captain in 2010. So this is my 10-year anniversary for being a stage captain.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So funny. So when you were, I'm actually curious, like, how did he find rally and how did he get into becoming a stage captain?
So SCCA back at the time was still supporting stage rally, and they had kind of a meet and greet where they had all of the disciplines there, and they were represented, I think the lapping days, solo, all of the race events that SCCA supported. And he was really drawn to the rally community. They're really nice people. They're really inclusive. So he's like, gosh, I want to be a part of this. And he actually had a goal of growing rally in the U.S. So he went to sports marketing, got his MBA, got a job at Rally America. So he calls it the 7-year interview. So he was a stage captain for 7 years and got on to Rally America. And then I came in on his shirt tails, and then I became the stage captain to fill the gap that when he left. So it's interesting to think that I think the Siverts name has been in rally between him and myself for 20 years.
Yeah. So when you were starting as a captain, what were the things that he shared with you as like the most important parts of the job?
Well, I actually shadowed under existing stage captains as a volunteer because he, at that time, I went to a couple events as a spectator, but then he moved to Vermont to work with Rally America. So I didn't really train under my brother, which may have been a good thing because we're so goofy together. It's so fun having him on the same stage as me. So I just kind of learned, we shadow under people, and I take things that I like from people or things that I can maybe do better, and kind of learned on my own.
Awesome.
At what point did you decide you wanted to go from just, volunteer to actually be a stage captain and take on that responsibility?
Well, there's always a need for stage captains because the amount of stages that we can run are limited by the amount of stage captains to run a crew to run those stages. So, what made me make that decision? I don't know. I was a little senile and not thinking straight. Yeah. It was actually listening in on my friend's ham radio and hearing what actually went on behind the scene and what was involved, and thinking that I could contribute to that. And also with my brother moving to that as a career move, I definitely wanted this sport to succeed so that he would succeed.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you, though. Have you ever thought about doing a mouse model for people's first time at rally?
Oh, that'd be amazing.
The whole thing would be lit up.
Yeah, I'll work on that. It's like, this is awesome. Like, his brain's just...
Find that trigger.
Yeah. Where is that rally, Jane? Where is that insanity?
I think they've researched that with like video games, like what parts of the brain really come alive when people play video games that keeps them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's part of what we do. Like, we see what neurons fire when they have a little movie that the mouse watches. It's kind of cute. So there was a whole discussion on what movie the mouse would watch. That was a thing. So.
These are like the jokes, like the inside jokes of the neuroscience community.
Right.
You have another question. This one is a little more serious. You were talking about being in the garage with your dad and your grandfather, and I'm assuming your brother as well. Did they have specific cars that they like? Because often you find in a family, they're like a Dodge family, or they like British cars.
Yeah. Well, we didn't grow up with a lot of money, so my dad had the new Peugeot that he got was the first car that he got that was new. It was a diesel Peugeot. That was pretty cool. It was clackety and loud, and it had a Buick. It was, I think my grandparents' generation was definitely American car build generation. My dad was a Harley guy, so definitely American. I think my brother was the one that got me into Japanese cars. So.
That's funny. So you mentioned hearing what goes on through the ham radio, and that you felt like you could offer something, you felt like you could be a part of it. What are the things that you hear that maybe people don't realize go on behind the scenes?
I swore once on the ham radio. I wasn't supposed to.
Not allowed?
No, it's not allowed. That's not allowed. But there was missing a gate key, and it just kind of came out, and the stewards were like, "Oh, that's we'll just look over that." But the whole top level heard that because they listen in. They monitor our stage frequencies. Yes, that was not good. I got a very polite talking to on that. But yeah, it's a lot of chit chat, and people hear because it's broadcast open frequencies. So we get a lot of people that just monitor the frequency, ham radio enthusiasts, and they're like, "What's going on out there in the woods?" So a lot of questions. It's pretty fun, but it's great communication. We chat with each other, and it makes setting up a stage so much easier if people have a scanner or a ham radio. I'm like, "There's your spot." They go off and get there. So it's fun. Just hearing the inside communication. So we have a network frequency, what we call mountaintop, or it depends on what rally and what they call it. But basically, they monitor the whole frequencies. Our emergency comms are on there. The stage logistics are on that, and then we each have our own individual stage frequencies. But we have access to both, so it's neat to listen to the mountaintop frequency for stage logistics and setup, and hop on sweep frequencies to see what's going on for emergency comms. It's our course opening, listening in on them as they set up course. So it's really neat to hear the logistics because our stage miles are 5 to 30 miles long. So it takes a lot of radio communication to get these set up safely.
So I notice, in the paddock, often you will see spectators who buy one of those, cheap handhelds and listen in on the stages. And people probably not everyone probably realizes that you can actually do that. Listen in. Are these, all these frequencies, are these published anywhere? Like how would one find this to say, like, listen in on a stage if they're at an event?
Yeah, they're not published, but you can scan through the frequencies to find them. I mean, we're pretty vocal and chatting the whole weekend from 7 a.m. As I'm driving through, I start catching the frequencies, and it gets me in rally mode to hear that communication. And it's really fun because even through hand communication, if a car is off, the teams will use that and use us in order to coordinate getting the car off, what happened. So it's kind of fun to hear that. So yeah, absolutely. A volunteer spectator, they can get either a cheap used ham radio or a scanner to scan the ham radio frequencies, find it and listen in. And we also use a repeater, so it carries pretty far, but I think maybe 4 or 5 different frequencies, but they're pretty close to each other. So you can easily find it.
Right. And probably a lot of people don't realize, so to broadcast on these frequencies, you have to have a license. Mm-hmm. However, to listen on the frequencies, you don't need any license at all. You just can't broadcast unless it's...
That is correct. And also, all of the FCC rules go out the window if there's an emergency, so it makes it safer because usually we're out in the places that don't have cell phone reception. So if you have that ham radio, if something happens to you and you're out there, you are able to use that ham radio in an emergency situation without a license. So.
Just take a second to plug. It is simple and straightforward and not expensive to get your ham license. And if you want to volunteer, which we'll talk about later, if you want to volunteer at a rally, that's a huge piece of the puzzle. So take the time, find a class, do it, get certified. You'll be happy you did.
Yeah, why don't you actually tell us you have yours, and so why don't you tell us, like, what did it take to get it?
It is really easy, as Katie said. You don't need to learn Morse code, so we just use a technician license. We use 2-meter band frequencies, so it's you don't need a really complicated radio. QRZ.com is a really great resource. They have practice tests, and you can even just take those practice tests. You don't really need to study. It's all free. The test is not expensive, $25-ish, maybe. But a lot of local ham clubs put those on a volunteer basis. They even teach free, maybe, courses, or very cheap. So they want to encourage people to do this and get their license. They even have ham radio swaps where you can get cheap gear if price for a radio is expensive. I mean, usually it runs 150 to 250, 300, 400 for anywhere from a 5-watt to a brand new 50-watt radio, but buy some cheap gear, used gear. Nothing wrong with it. So,
so let's talk a little bit about leading up to an event. As a stage captain, you have a lot of pre-work you have to do before race week even comes up. Talk us through some of those things you have to do in advance.
Yeah, so I've learned a lot as I've gone through the years. Email templates are great. So first I'm like, what am I doing? So it was really overwhelming, but it's great. We coach you. I learned a lot from people from several events, so I kind of knew what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. So we get our maps and stage assignments well in advance. I mean, when the last rally ends, we're already planning the next rally, so we have our routes, our maps. We know where we're going. We're already having meetings. So it takes our organizing committee is working on this year round. So about 2 months before, I think of how many people I need per stage, where I'm going to meet, the time it's going to take to set up a stage, and people guide you through that and give guidelines. But I've also learned from experience, like I think it takes 1.5 hours or 2 hours to set it up, but it took me a little bit longer, or how can I shorten it? Where can I meet to make this more efficient? So people aren't waiting for 3 hours or meeting at 6 a.m. People usually don't like to do that. So but sometimes it happens, or we have a really late stage. So I send out a group email with some information, and I like people to be involved and take ownership of their stage. I want to get to know people. So I try to give them as much information in advance so they know what to expect, like what to bring, which we can talk about later for new volunteers, some stage maps and where to meet, what time to meet, and generally what they're going to be doing. And if people have any special requests, like, hey, I want to work with somebody, or I don't want to work start, or I want to work start, I will definitely honor that. So I try to plan as much of that up front so that morning of, I don't have to do a ton of changes. So race weekend, we meet in the morning, I give the safety talk, and then we caravan out to stage, and then I place people in their positions, do any necessary training for timing controls. We run our race, have a lot of fun, and then we, meaning mostly me and a small group of people, we clean stage at the end. So.
And how many stages do you usually run over the course of a weekend? Like, how many are you responsible for? So
I usually run one stage 2 or 3 times, usually twice. And it depends on the organizer for how long. For the Olympics rally, our stages are pretty long. Like a short stage for me is 13 miles. You have 60, 80 cars, a minute each. So the stage will run hot for about an hour, hour and a half, depending on the entry. That length of stage usually takes me about 2 hours to set up, plus an hour ahead. So that's already 5 hours. We have a gap in between, and then we run it again. So it's a long day. But it's a really fun day, and I think it's great. It's like you're out in the woods watching cars go by.
Yeah, it's not a bad job.
Yeah.
You mentioned the time controls, which I know when you're looking for people to join your crew, it's good to have someone who either has some experience or has good aptitude for that part of the job, because not everyone knows how to do it. Talk a little bit about what that responsibility is.
Yeah, so there's 2 checkpoints at the beginning of the stage. They have something called the Arrival Time Control, or ATC for short, and they check in there, and that basically monitors their transit time so that they don't speed during transit. So they check in before the stage, and then they have 3 minutes for the actual stage start. So there's the ATC checkpoint where you basically write in the log where they arrive, so the time that they arrive, and then you also write on the time card. That's a really fun one because it's pretty chill. The drivers aren't concentrated at the start line, so it's a great way. And usually they arrive early, especially the top drivers, so you can chit chat with them, get some autographs, and it's it's kind of fun. I love all positions for different reasons. So then they move to start, and you get to watch the cars launch. That's really cool, and it's really busy. There's a lot going on. I find it a lot of fun, and that's where I'm at as stage captain. I'm at start to monitor the stage. Our EMT crew is there, our sweep crew is there, and sweep is their vehicle recovery team. So they're all positioned at start. The cars will run through, and then we have the flying finish, which is where they actually capture the hot time. So they're going in hot there. So we have somebody with a time clock and a radio and a log to radio the time that they cross the finish line. And then there's a stop control where they shut down, slow down, and that's where their time is logged on their time card. So there's essentially 4 time control positions that can be worked.
Yeah, I was about to call that out. So people probably, if you're spectating, you probably don't recognize like the drivers, but then you also have to have a crew to check in when you get there, control when the start happens, capture the finish time, relay it to another group who captures it again, and then writes it in on a time card. Like it's a lot of relaying information and keeping track.
Right, and it's fun because you're doing something, and you're doing stuff on the course as well. It's a very important position, so nothing wrong with road marshal and comms on course, but it's like go time when it starts. I mean, you're logging, usually timing equipment breaks, as you know. There's some troubleshooting, and it's fun. I really enjoy it.
Like, no, I swear it's fun.
Yeah, no, I'm not selling this very well. Things break, and we've had rollovers right before flying finish, and it's just because people are going hot. Car fire. No, I'm not really selling this very well, am I?
Actually making it a lot exciting.
Yeah.
Speaking of all this, that brings up a question. Those events that you described generally bring out Red Cross and shuts down stage.
Yes.
So then what? What's your procedure then? How do you guys handle that?
So we are very fortunate to have a really wonderful EMT and sweep crew and course opening crew. So I am constantly learning, and that's what makes this interesting, trying to make myself better, more aware. And we have a great organizing crew to discuss these situations so that everybody can learn. So with the Red Cross situation, we work with our net control or the mountaintop radio, myself and the sweep crew, to assess the situation and deal with an emergency situation. So safety is definitely first, and getting the E-crew where they need to be. It's considering what these people do. I mean, they race 100 miles an hour through the woods. It's amazing. Everybody usually walks out safely. Every event we have rollovers, car fires these days, and everybody's okay. So.
All right. So I guess we should probably go back a little bit for those who don't know what a Red Cross is that during your driver packet, you're given a sheet or 2 different sheets. And one of them has a green check and the other one has a Red Cross.
It says okay.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Well, maybe it's green check. The point is that, like, if you have a situation where you're injured or you're blocking, you put out the Red Cross sign.
Yes.
And so why don't you go forward? Like, what would the procedures be at that point, kind of going forward? Someone puts out a Red Cross. Like, from that point forward, what happens?
Yeah. So the car that is giving the Red Cross, there's 2 ways to signal that, because again, you're in the middle of the woods. So that has to get to the organizers. So either the next car, race car that approaches that scene, relays that Red Cross to the next available radio position. And that's why ham radios are so important along course, because if the car, again, my longest stage was 30 miles. If that competitor has to drive 15 miles through twisty, tight dirt roads to get to the next radio position, that's time that somebody could be seriously injured. So having a lot of ham radios spread out throughout the course is really instrumental, really important. So the next competition car would go to the next radio point to radio that into me, or if there is a radio position that is within view of that Red Cross, they can radio it to me. I would radio net control to stop the stage immediately. And then the volunteers, the road marshals along course that have a ham radio and can hear that a red cross is called, they would slow down and safely stop all vehicles on course so that they don't go ramming into this rolled over vehicle or whatever the situation is on course. It might be a blind corner. So you're coming in 100 miles an hour and you can T-bone this car. So we shut down the stage as safely as we can, clear the stage so that the e-vehicles can assess the situation and get to the vehicle that needs aid. And hopefully everything's okay.
So then what happens at that point with timing? So like half the guys ran the stage and then half the guys didn't because of the Red Cross. What happens?
Usually that stage is scrapped and it's a DNF, or they give a certain time to all vehicles on that. We try to let the cars finish if they can, but again, we don't release a lot of information on the radio, or we just don't know the information. So we stop down all cars in case the nearest e-vehicle is through spectator area or at the finish, and that's the best way to get through. So we basically have to shut down all the vehicles, just make it as safe for everybody as possible to get to where they need to be.
So then the remaining vehicles would just transit the stage to the next stage?
Yeah, they would just transit through the stage, exit to the next stage, or the vehicles before that incident would have to turn around and then go down to the next stage. It's logistically not very fun, but it's part of racing.
It is, and I think people go in when you're racing, you are talked to about this, you know the protocol, you know the procedure, and it's just kind of part of the sport. So people know that this may be something they have to contend with. People don't usually, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, people don't usually get upset or give people a hard time. No,
not at all. Yeah, it's and we as organizers try to make the situation better for the next time as well. People want to race. So.
Yeah, you know, we feel really fortunate. We have so many people that race with us who also work with you guys and have taken some of the safety courses we've put on and you've put on, that sort of thing. We had a car fire at an event 2 months ago, and it went up fast and it got put out really fast. And
it was a big flame.
Huge.
And got put out really fast.
They got it out really fast, and the car was able to go home, get fixed, come back, and finish out the rest of the day.
That was impressive.
Oh, he lives down the block. I think he went home. Anyway.
I've seen at a rallycross in 15 years of doing that. Probably same with you, Keto.
Yeah. We've had a couple like tiny things, like where like a little bit of grass catches fire or something like that, but never the car. But it was amazing to see everyone's training just come into play.
I mean, we had 3 fire extinguishers on it immediately, put it out, and we put it out so fast. What happened is fuel line popped off. They didn't put the clamp on the right side of the bar, and it popped off. So he put it back on, put it on correctly, and by his next turn was back up on the line. Took off down the line, and all the fire extinguisher dust was like behind him.
That's dedication. That's the rally spirit.
I love it. So we're getting a little bit of echo. I'm sorry about that. Let's talk a little bit about your racing. So you guys started racing with your brother, and you still do.
I do. Thanks to you guys. Yeah, it's great. So started with autocross and really enjoyed that. And then I discovered this rallycross thing. So I think I did autocross for 2 years. Met some great people with that. People really take you under their wing and they want you to get better. So it was a great way to learn my car and car handling before I transitioned to dirt, because it's a completely different style of driving. So I discovered rallycross, and I was like, God, this is so much fun. So I was still doing autocross here and there and do a track school. But really, when I discovered rallycross, I raced monthly. I would drive to Oregon to race, wake up 5 a.m., drive to Hillsboro, Oregon, race, drive back, and it was wonderful. It was great.
And you mentioned about autocross, the people sort of mentoring you and taking you under their wing. But you've told me the same thing about people in rallycross, that there were some folks who've been around forever that really, really taught you a lot. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's anything as simple as doing a course walk in a group and talking about how to read cones, because that's part of it, learning how to read cones. And that's actually fun when it clicks and you're like, wow, I could take that a little differently. And the water truck, when they make a little mud pit, everybody hated it. But when I learned how to catch my car and put input in earlier, gosh, I loved it. It was great. Like when you learn how to handle those things, and everybody seems to complain about it, but use that as a learning experience. And it was, when it clicks, you're like, dang, yeah, bring out that water truck and make a little slippy spot.
What we're hearing is Akea's volunteering to go first the next time the water truck comes out. So
okay, well, there's that would mean I'd have to be seated a little bit better where I am. I'm a solid mid-pack racer.
We have so many people who do not want to be the first out after the water truck, and we hear about it nonstop. And it's exactly what you just said. Like, we have to order you guys in a way that makes sense. So can you just go?
They want a course that's not dusty at all, but they don't want the water truck anywhere near them. At the same time.
Can you make that happen?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
It's called rain.
So far, no.
Oh wait, but we don't want rain either. We want a nice sunny day.
Yeah, this is true. Oh man.
Yeah.
So you still come out and race the same car, right? Talk about your car.
I do. I still have my '05 Bug-Eye wagon. I love that thing. Every time I take it out. So it used to be my only car. So it was my daily driver, rallycross. I did track schools with it. It was my car I used for stage captaining. It's done everything, but I love that car so much that it's kind of hurting to beat it up. So I retired it to a garage queen, so it comes out for rallycrosses now. Because it's actually, I haven't washed it since last year.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's not good.
Yeah,
But, it's ready for the
No,
next
I was going to say you need to go back and listen to episode 4 with Chad Berg.
I did. I know. That's bad.
That's a clean car.
Oh, yeah. The moment he's polishing freaking fire extinguishers. I mean, come on. Can he come over?
I'm sure he's available.
You just need a little house fire and you'll get them
Oh,
there.
God.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Take it. Put out the fire and wash the car, please.
While you're at it.
Yeah, wash the car first and then put out the fire.
Totally. That's probably where his priorities are anyway.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to get into working on stage, how would you suggest they start?
Just come out. So come to any of our event websites. So I'm a stage captain for Olympus Rally and Oregon Trail Rally. I've done other events as well, but I'm mostly for those two. So on each of their event websites, there's a little tab that says volunteer, and it'll bring you to rallydata.com where you can sign up, create a profile, and that's your profile forever, so you don't have to keep recreating profiles. And you click on the event that you want to volunteer at, and you'll get an email with a lot of information. As you know, Katie, you're just like me, probably way too much information, but it's good.
It's never enough.
Yeah, and never read, but that's okay. No, it's good. And show up at the meet time, and we'll coach you through it. You don't have to have any experience. Just be willing to stand out in the woods all day. And I usually give you a list of things to bring, like dress for the weather, just like you're camping, full tank of gas, food and water, something to do to pass the time. Because if you want to be busy the whole time, be a stage captain. I'm busy the whole time. But when I place volunteers, you usually sit there for an hour while I'm setting up the rest of the stage. So bring something to do or a friend to bug. Some chairs. And I had another friend, they have a full camp setup sprinter with a barbecue, tables, little flamingo cup holders. I mean, it's really fun. So make a day out of it.
So is there a place to let you know or let them know that you want to work with somebody in particular, come out with a friend or a spouse or whatever? Yes,
absolutely. So on rallydata.com, we now have a drop-down menu where you can pick your stage captain if you have a preference. We have a comment section where you list your group of friends, and I read those. I have a little spreadsheet where I group everybody together. So put who you want to work with, and I'll make it happen as best I can, and usually I can. If you want to work a position, if you don't want to work a position, let us know. We want you to have fun.
Yeah.
We want you to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
I do also, you mentioned that, be ready to stand in the woods all day. There are usually opportunities if you have some kind of physical limitation and you literally can't stand in the woods all day. There are usually options. So don't let that be a limiter if you're interested in finding out.
That's a very good point, Katie, because it's not just being on stage. There's a whole slew of other things. There's volunteers in the service area. There's volunteers for registration where you're in a casino and we need people to register the competitors. Volunteers for scoring. I mean, they usually get the nice RV. So, there are many, many things that you can do. Our net control person's wonderful. She is a 911 operator. So she just fits right in. She's amazing. So we need people like that to run comms.
I always suggest to people, if you're interested in getting into anything, whether it's motorcycle racing or rally racing or anything, go out and volunteer. Then you figure out, for example, what are the fast cars? Pretty simple to figure that out. That's the ones that always finish first.
And also for future competitors, how does a rally work? How do the time controls work? How do the time cards work? It's easier and less stressful to learn as a volunteer than learning as you're pulling up to the start line. I mean, you can take classes. We have lots of classes, but it's a great way to be exposed to it before you actually compete.
So you mentioned it's less stressful to start as a volunteer, but I'm sure when you're getting started, you still run into some stressful situations. What is something that you maybe learned the hard way out on the job that you would love to pass on as a bit of information?
Well, I've made a lot of those mistakes. So I usually tell people, don't do this because I've done it. So I try to coach people as best I can or place them with an experienced volunteer. I will never leave you on your own to figure it out yourself. And I'll try to tell you what went wrong because usually I did it as I was learning. So I try to give everybody as much information to feel comfortable. But you're right, stuff still happens. And so I pair them with an experienced volunteer or myself if they're at start. To learn. And I also have a co-captain on the finish end, somebody experienced there to help run that because realistically you can't do it all from one end, especially if you're 30 miles from the other end.
Right. So. Yeah. Well, this has been really great. Yes. I would love it if you would tell people where they can find you online.
Yeah. So I have a Facebook page. My name is difficult to spell, but it'll be on Katie and Keto's website. So I think you can search for my name and I have my little stickered up Subaru as a profile picture. Also check out olympusrally.com for the events, OregonTrailRally.com, their website, or just search for it. So yeah, come check out our events. Tour de Forest should be running and hopefully, given everything, should be running in September.
And what's the website again where people can sign up and volunteer?
Rallydata.com.
Rallydata.com.
Yeah. I'll link to all of it in the show notes, but it's good to talk about. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing everything and your story and just for always being such a great positive light in rally.
Absolutely.
It was so much fun. It's a great sport.